was like through your eyes, but all I could see closed in on me, the fragility.
Hi everyone. I'm really excited this evening to chat to an individual who works in a part of the industry that we've not really had anyone represent yet. And it's Katie Tavini, who has absolutely sprinkled her magic onto so many albums that I absolutely love. She's worked most recently on the Rudimental record, Block Party, Arlo Parks, and Los Bichos. And I was trying to do a quick tot up as well of how many records that she's worked on of artists that have played Future Yards. And I know that I'll have missed out an absolute ton, but there's loads and they're so spread out across different genres as well, like Nadine Shah, Arcs, Pillow Queens, We Are Scientists, Loose Articles, Dits, Steel and Sheep, She Drew the Gun, Melt Yourself Down, and also Jen as well, who we're talking to next month. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in mastering engineer extraordinaire, Katie Tavini. Hi. Oh, I went to TV presenter then. That was really weird. How are you doing? Are you okay?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm all right, yeah. I'm all right. I used to, I haven't done one of these for absolutely ages, and I always used to have my after work pint while I was doing them, and I stopped drinking last year, but I've still managed to get my after work pint, which is alcohol free. So it's like traditions won't die, basically. But yeah, there's loads of stuff that I want to dig into. But first of all, I think, I think for a lot of artists, a lot of bands who are releasing music, the mastering side of the creation of their single or their EP or whatever it is can often feel like really, really hidden away. And actually knowing the individuals that have had such a kind of key, have put together, have helped put together like a really key part of that release as well. Like it can seem quite faceless. So it's really, really cool that we get to talk to you, and also that you work as well in our region.
I do. I'm in Toxteth.
Yeah, amazing. I know it's weird doing this online when we're both in the same city, isn't it? But what I want to get from you is I guess why you're working in this part of the industry, why you're working in this part of the process of people's music. So maybe before we kind of get into that, tell me about how music became at the forefront of your life, how it became something that you wanted to make a living from.
Oh, that's such a hard question. Like, I've done a lot of other jobs, but I'm just not good at anything else. And also, I've worked in the music industry as a recording engineer, which I loved, but kind of at entry-level recording engineer stage, you're kind of expected to mix because a lot of projects don't have the kind of funds for a mix engineer. And I was shit at it. I was just so bad. And no matter how much I practiced, I never improved. And I didn't really know what mastering was. But yeah, I just kind of fell into it, and it made sense because it's finishing things, like it's finishing something, and it's working with people so that they're putting out the best version of their music and like bringing their kind of vision to life when it comes to their, how their release is going to sound. And that just, that really kind of made sense in my head. Whereas the other parts of working in music just didn't kind of click with me. And then other jobs, I just found it really soul destroying, working like 9 to 5, making someone really, really rich. Like I just find that really icky. So yeah, kind of being freelance, like I get to help people. I get to work with really good people, and yeah, I like it a lot.
Did you, when you were younger, did you go through the route of learning instruments, and like what was your relationship to music like when you were in your formative years, kind of thing?
Well, my dad's always been into music, always. He's such a big indie kid. So, I grew up listening to my dad's records, and yeah, I learned to play the violin in school, which just, you kind of get offered it in primary school, and I was like, yeah, okay, cool, whatever. I don't really think I thought about it. You just kind of go along with stuff like, we had recorder lessons and, funding the arts is cool. But when it came to going to uni, I didn't really know how to do anything else, and that was a bit of an easy win, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. So I just went to uni and just sort of did a music degree and thought, worst case scenario, I'll be a music teacher at the end of it. But yeah, I had no idea that I'd end up on this path. Because I used to go to gigs and I used to be way more interested in like kind of like I used to love watching bands, but I used to be really, really fascinated in what the live sound engineers were doing.
Yeah.
And so I had this really curiosity about behind the scenes stuff, and it just, yeah, I always wanted to kind of know more about that. And so when it came to uni and we had this really small like studio module, I sort of threw everything into it. And just, yeah, one of my tutors was like, "Oh, you're here all the time. Do you want a job in a studio?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do. That'll be cool." And I thought I'd be just like making tea and some stuff for a few weeks, but actually I ended up working with some really cool people, and yeah, that was super inspirational. And I kind of saw that, oh wait, you can, you don't have to go and get a job where you wear boring clothes every day and work with boring people in a boring office. Sorry to anyone who has an office job. Not my vibe.
Our office is far from boring, I swear to God.
There you go.
That's unreal that there was somebody that kind of pushed you at uni along those lines, though. Do you think that doing the roles that you've done in the lead up to kind of becoming a mastering engineer, do you think you've benefited from like having mentors or having people that are kind of quite close to you that are inspiring and have like encouraged you, I guess, in kind of quite difficult environments sometimes?
Yeah, I've never had a mentor as such. Like I'm entirely self-taught at mastering, and when I was doing studio work, I was working with John Ellis, who's an amazing keys player, and Bill Leader, who's just a fantastic folk producer. And they really were so good with me, and they really kind of encouraged me to kind of just go out and try stuff and say yes to things. But when it's kind of, yeah, come to mastering, I've not really had a mentor. I've not had any guidance and stuff. So it's kind of, and as well, I should say this, like I've only been mastering full time for 4 years. Before that, I had a job working at the British Library in their sound archive as a transfer engineer. Before that, I had a marketing job. So, like I've been building mastering up since like 2014 or something for, yeah, 10 years. So it's been a real journey, and I've tried to take things from those other jobs that are not necessarily mastering, but that have still kind of taught me stuff. Like I've done loads of bar work, which has taught me like people skills and I guess like service, like yeah, customer service type stuff. I've done marketing, which has showed me like how to sell myself as a freelancer. Um, I mean, the British Library job was just like amazing, and that like, I mean, I guess that one was more sort of like practical, like listening skills that helped me with. But yeah, so none of the kind of jobs that I've done have been mega related, but I've managed to take stuff from all of them.
I think that's really, really important. I always think that we're all kind of products of our experience, and that's what makes us unique, and particularly in our approach. And I guess when you're working alongside like artists and bands that are so close to their own music for obvious reasons, like they've been in it for so long, and particularly with like an album, and sometimes it's hard to communicate, you know, how they want it to feel or how they want it to be. So having that kind of people skills and patience and be able to communicate well and all of that, which might come from jobs that are really, really far removed from a recording studio or any kind of environment that you'd naturally inhabit with bands and artists. It's got to be a good thing, right? It's got to be something that is really desirable when you're trying to get the best out of how a record should sound.
Yeah, definitely. I think for bands and artists, it can be really scary, kind of bringing this new person that they don't know in at the end. And I really see it as part of my job to make them feel comfortable and to make sure that they know what's going to happen, like what this process is, and make them feel comfortable enough that they can say, actually, I think this should sound a bit different. And because, it can be scary to ask for revisions. Can be scary to say, like, what are vinyl sides or what's a DDP? So yeah, I kind of see it as a really big part of my job is kind of guiding people through that process. And yeah, just making sure that they're like feeling good about their work and feeling confident in it.
Do you a lot of the time when we talk about mastering, we see that as part of the process of basically getting a song ready for distribution, to getting it into the right form so that the public can hear it, and to making sure that all of the tracks are all, the same level. Like, how would you describe mastering from your perspective? How would you describe, like, I guess how would you describe it in a more nuanced way?
So I think of mastering as being 3 different stages. So I'd always say the first step is a quality check because, like you said earlier, when people are really, really close to their music, they might not have heard little things like maybe there's a bit of talking on the end of a vocal take that shouldn't be there. And it's really, really buried, but I'm going to notice that because I'm a totally new pair of ears. Or maybe there's like tiny little clicks and pops that, I can just get rid of. So it's just quality checking and making sure that everything is there. The mix is well balanced. Like, some people who release their own music also mix it themselves.
Yeah.
And they may, I work on a lot of kind of first releases. And so it's just maybe saying to people, oh, this bass is really nice. Maybe it could come up a little bit. So just making sure that the mix is like functioning as it is. There's nothing in there that shouldn't be. Making sure there's no reverb tails cut off at the very end. That's really, really common. It's just kind of like little nitpicky things like that. Then the second part, which is, I think, one of the smallest parts of mastering, but it's the most hyped on the internet, is the audio processing part. Yeah, everyone loves to talk about that and tell you that these are the secrets the pros don't tell you, and there's actually no secrets. And they try and sell you courses and they try and sell you plugins, and it's wild. It's so wild. But yeah, that's actually like quite a small part. So what I'll do is I'll come and kind of with a fresh perspective, just like do some little tweaks. Obviously there is a kind of a leveling out kind of I get quite a few albums where different tracks have been produced and mixed by different people. So it's just making sure that, if continuity is a request, that happens, but not too much continuity that you're kind of taking all of the character away from the songs. And then the third part is the most important. What's that, sorry?
Quite a common part of it these days as well, is that there are different people that have produced or mixed. So is there, as part of that process, like, have you ever got to a point where somebody has presented like a record and it's the mixes are so vastly different that it needs to kind of be taken away again?
No, I think there's it depends what the person who, the artist wants.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time when they send you a mix, they're happy with it. So Moonchild Sonelli's last album, Phases, was, I mean, there were songs that had been mixed by the same people, but there were also songs that had been mixed by completely different people. And it's 19 songs, so it's a big album.
Yeah, gotcha.
But for that, we went with kind of a mixtape vibe rather than
Right.
like
Yeah.
kind of making it super flow, because each song had like amazing characteristics and kind of it was its own thing. And so I
Yeah.
sort of treated mastering that more of a compilation
Got ya.
than and it's all, when it's kind of the same artist or the same vocalist, there will be things that sound the same anyway, like, the vocals. So just making sure that they flow and thinking, well, everything else can kind of, we don't need to touch that too much. Like
Yeah.
it's the vocals, just pick like one thing, and that can be the thing that'll tie it together.
So it's kind of like leaning into those stylistic differences rather than trying to I don't want to say paper over them, but smooth them out.
Yeah.
Knowing that there are differences between those different tracks that have gone through different processes. Cool.
Yeah. And then the third part of mastering is the really boring part, which is like creating all the formats. And if we've got a 10-track album, there'll be the 10 main tracks. So say if they were mixed at the original sample rate of 48K, we'd do some like incremental downsampling of those, just so that whoever's going to release this has all of the different formats of that.
Yeah.
Because some distributors will only take 16-bit files or whatever. And then there'll be the alternative mixes, so that could include instrumentals for every song, radio edits for a couple of songs, TV mixes, karaoke mixes, PA mixes. The list is endless really with alt formats. And then again, we'd kind of do incremental sample rates for those, just so that someone has everything. So then your 10-track album, kind of, you get like, I can't do the maths on that, but that's a lot of files. And that's before you've even made your vinyl sides or your DDP or your cassette sides. So it's kind of just making sure that whoever's going to release this has all of these files, so that they're not coming back to you in a stress going, where's this? Where's this? I need this now. They know exactly what the files that they've got are. They know where to find them. Just like really good file management. And I think that's the biggest part of mastering, really, is just making sure that everyone has what they need in order to release their project.
Yeah. So that's there's quite a lot of skills there, isn't there? When you think about it, from just having like a really good ear to pick up on the things that need to be highlighted, and then also just to kind of make sure that you're delivering a package that is really, really easy for them to then do the next job along. So it is such as a key component. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you as well is around what you hear in records that you haven't touched. Is there any, when you were kind of establishing what you wanted to do and what part of the journey that you wanted to be on with the production of an album, is there any like albums that you find that like you listen to and it just shone, or that there was just something magical about it that you think, God, I want to do that to people's I want to do that to people's music? Is there releases that have inspired you in this world?
There's so many releases that have inspired me, but I think the releases that have inspired me are not necessarily like, I've never sat down and thought, oh, that's a really well mastered, or especially like early days, I didn't know what mastering was.
Yeah.
So, and I think if mastering's done well, you probably shouldn't be able to hear it in a final release. It should be you know, you should just focus on the music and that's it. But yeah, I think the things that kind of made me want to work in music, although there's an album by Holy Fuck called Latin, and that's a really, maybe it's an EP. It's kind of like a long EP. And Mandy Parnell mastered it, but I love the mastering on that because it's, you know, one of the tracks is live and
Yeah.
all the others have been mixed by different people. And when I was kind of starting out, I was like, oh my God, like, how's she done this? This is magic. But, you know, I think she's so talented and has the best ears. And actually, a lot of her discography is my favorite albums. I don't think that's a coincidence. So yeah, it's yeah, I never sat down and thought, oh, this song's really well mastered or this album's really well mastered. But I think the ones that are just kind of is good music.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I mean, Holy Fuck are one of those bands, aren't they? There's just like you hear something on every listen with some of their stuff. Like one of my
So
mates was on the aisle to Holy Fuck. One of the things that like going through, you know, the discography of records and the artists that you've worked with is that there's not a specific genre there, is there? And I know that, you know, genres in some ways are a thing of the past, and that, you know, music and with the emergence of like streaming platforms and playlists and stuff like that, we're not genre specific anymore, but yours is particularly all over the place in the best possible way. Is
thanks.
that purposeful? Is that something that you wouldn't want to limit yourself to a certain style of music?
Yeah, one of my reasons I love this job so much is because it's so varied. So I typically work on an album a day. Like mastering's a really quick process. And I think if I was doing the same genres each day, I think I'd get bored and start to not like this. I think, I don't know, I think my discography kind of represents my music
Yeah.
taste. But I think with mastering as well, it's really hard to specialize in a genre because of the amount of work that you have to do.
Mhm.
Like, it's going to be really, really hard to specialize in one genre or two genres or, you know, whatever, and actually like pay the rent. If we're being real here. But I think, you know, I'm in a really lucky position where, like, you know, you mentioned Arcs before and Pillow Queens and Loose Articles. They're all bands that I would have, you know, if they were around when I was 15,
Oh
oh
my
my God,
God.
like
Stop
I
it.
love that so much. But you know, I get to work with bands who I'm genuinely a really big fan of anyway. And yeah, it's amazing. I love it.
I feel exactly the same about those bands as well. It's just like I feel like there's so many. I would have made so many different choices when I was younger if I had like role models and people on stage that were like that, and they're so lovely as well. That must be. I mean, that must be such a win. Is like to be part of that of those of the journeys of those artists, and then to watch those albums get released and get the reception that they get as well. Um, do you think is there is there anything that comes into your inbox that you're just like that is a challenge too far, like with it with stylistically with like any music? Is there stuff that you're just like, no, I'm just gonna absolutely go for it?
Um, like not really. I don't know. I feel like you just have to be up for it. If someone's come to you and said, "I think you're the right person to master my record," I think even if you're like, "Whoa, I've never heard of this genre before," you've got to go and listen to some music and kind of, you know, just get familiar because yeah, I never want to turn anyone away if they like I'm so lucky if people want to work with
Yeah.
me. So, yeah, it's just but you know, I try and listen to as much music as possible and as much music outside of my kind of, you know, immediate circle, I guess. I try to listen to music in those different languages, because I think if you're like limiting yourself to like just music in your own language, you're missing so much cool stuff. Um, so yeah, I just try and sort of be as broad as possible with my taste, and then if something comes in my inbox and I'm not sure how to approach it, I just get on it, just get listening to loads of stuff, see, ask for some references,
Yeah.
see, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think I'd be like, I don't know. There's nothing coming that I've not known what it like, roughly what it should sound like.
Yeah, like that you don't know what to do with, kind of thing. Is there, like, I find different people with different roles in the music industry, the way that they listen to music or watch bands live, for example, as well. It's kind of once they've started doing a specific job, it puts a lens over the way that they're engaging with that artist, and they kind of will view it in a certain way with certain things in mind, because it's what they do day to day. Is that something that happens to you when you're listening to records? Is that do you ever have a kind of like, well, that would sound differently if I got my hands on it, kind of thing? Like, are you able to just kind of enjoy stuff like freely?
So I think the thing about mastering is when I'm working on an album, I'm working on it from the point of view of the listener. And so I'm always thinking like, I'm just listening to records and enjoying them. Like when I'm working, like I might be a little bit nitpicky sometimes with like clicks and pops and stuff, but it just, I don't know. I think the longer that I've done this for, the more the more into just music fan mode I get, rather than, oh, I'm a technical person doing technical things, because that's a lie. I'm not a technical person at all. It's just, some of this job happens to be a little bit techy. But yeah, no, I just put music on and enjoy it, and I think knowing what happens behind the scenes makes me appreciate more if I do like something. So
Yeah.
don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, totally. No, it really, really does. It does, absolutely. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you was about the working in a solitary fashion. Really, is that I mean, I wouldn't even have tried to be able to have a day on my own working at Future Yard, because it's not that environment whatsoever. And we've got a number of different people on Propeller as well that have got studios at home, or they're working out of like their own studio, which isn't surrounded by other people doing similar things. And what I wanted to ask you is about like what's that like for you? Like, how do you have days where it does feel a bit like cabin fever, or like how what's that like for you? I guess working in a role that is predominantly done on your own.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and something that people don't really talk about. And I didn't really think about that until I started mastering full time, and I went freelance during the pandemic, and obviously it was really isolated then.
Extreme.
So I feel
Extreme.
like for a job, this is all I've known. But I have my cat who comes and hangs out here, and I get down to the gym a few times a week just to like see people, and I go to a couple of gigs a week. And so, it's not like I never leave the house or something. But I think it's really helpful to have a support network. So I've got two amazing managers, Brendan and Carla, and then I work with two other mastering engineers. And so kind of having that, even though we're not all in the same room at the same time, I'll speak to kind of, everyone sort of ongoingly, don't know if that's a word, on like just throughout the day. Like, there'll be communication, and sometimes I'll have meetings with artists, and sometimes I'll do things like this. And so kind of, I think, yeah, it can be really lonely. but yeah, because you are alone.
Yeah.
But it's not, you're not. I think you have to force yourself to get out. It can be really easy to get into the habit of just, never leaving the house. But it's weird. I think the whole kind of adjusting to being freelance is weird as well. So I have therapy once a week, and it's just, good to talk about, like, God, am I gonna survive? Or like, just, like, little worries and concerns about stuff. Like, I think it's really important to talk to your peers about that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, but I think it's also really important just to talk to someone who's being paid to listen to all of your problems, because this is such a weird job. Like, people come up to me and are like, "Oh, you're living my dream life," and I'm like, "You have no idea what I've had to do to get here."
Yeah.
So yeah, it's strange, but I like it.
I think that's a really important point as well, is that for me, I feel like I discovered that there's no such thing as a dream job, because it's not the be all and end all. It's what you cultivate around that job, so that it isn't just that, and that life isn't just that, and that music isn't just that either. I mean, that's a really, really key thing, is that if we make our whole lives about our jobs, is that you kind of lose the joy out of why you got into music in the first place. If it's like the only relationship that I have with music is that it pays my way, like it pays my rent, then there's something that's gone wrong. Like, it's,
Totally.
and it's something that I've spoke to a therapist about as well, is just like, what is my relationship with this? And I think it's particularly when you go into that freelancer world for the first time as well. And what comes with that is that feeling sometimes of, when you're not working, you feel like you should be working, and setting those boundaries. Do you think that, I mean, you've obviously cultivated a career that has, with working with managers and having, people within the same company that are doing the same role. You've cultivated that deliberately, I'm guessing, so
Yeah.
that you don't feel like that you're just on your own and that you're having to just answer to yourself all the time. Like, how important was that for you, that transition of like going into the role as a freelancer and then kind of bringing team members on board?
Um,
That was a really, really clumsy way of wording that. I hope that made sense.
yeah, I'm not sure my answer's gonna make sense though. Like,
We'll read between the lines.
so I'd been freelance for about 2 weeks, and I asked Brendan to manage me, and he didn't wanna manage me. I was like, "Can you please manage me because I need help?" But I think, so my career grew weirdly fast, um, kind of, I think in part due to the pandemic, and, just you're stuck inside, so you might as well work, and there were no boundaries, and it was just work all the time, and then Brendan saw how badly I was sort of operating, and, you know, so then we brought Carla on board initially, just to do a couple of hours a week replying to my emails, because I was so busy that I didn't even have time to reply to emails for new work. So that was really weird. And like, I think when you quit your job, you think, "Oh shit, this is horrifying." I've got to make sure that I have enough work in to pay my rent. But then I think because of the pandemic, and we're inside all the time, and there was a lot of people making music, um, and learning how to produce their own music,
Yeah.
and um, first release, they'd be asking me to master it, and then they'd make more, and then they'd make more, and sort of that snowballed a little bit, and I was not expecting that to happen, really grateful that it did, but I was not expecting it at all. So it's kind of the opposite problem that I'd planned for, is that too much work. And then so Carla started managing my diary and yeah, phenomenally got me, like, I think she did like 2 days work and got me booked up like 4 months in advance or
Oh
something,
my God.
which for mastering, because it's such a quick turnaround, is like that never happens. That's really weird. So, and it's
That's
really bad as well.
wild. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
because
that is
mastering's so quick
wild.
that people
But
expect it
even,
done
but even
now.
just kind of starting off as a freelancer and the
Yeah.
stuff that goes through your head when you go freelance is the worry of like, am I going to be able to sustain this? And obviously all of the admin and shit, all of the like awful bits about being a freelancer that we need to tackle on top of that. And you're in a situation where the only thing that people can do is things that happen indoors and the creation of music and the production of it. And then that's wild to just get into that situation where it's like, right, okay, I'm booked up for every day for the next, like every working day for the next 4 months.
Was not expecting it at all. It was so
Was no one else
nuts.
mastering, Katie? Were you like the only one? Like, was everyone just
I
like,
didn't
nah?
know. So, yeah, I've no idea. Like, people were mastering. I don't know. I don't know what happened. It went, it escalated. And so that was when I decided to bring Stephen on and work with him because, some people didn't want to wait 4 months, understandably. Like, I wouldn't want to wait that long. And so, yeah, I started working with Stephen because of that. And then with Izzy, I'd been mentoring her through the pandemic. And then, kind of needed to work with someone else as well. So, yeah, brought Izzy on board as well. And kind of, it's at a good place now. Like, I'm not booked up too far in advance. And like, I've had to do loads of kind of organizing my work week and how I structure my work week
Yeah.
with Brendan and Carla to, sometimes the projects with the shortest deadline are the like, you know, sometimes you just want to jump on those because they can be what can progress your career.
Yeah.
So I wanted to leave time in my kind of week to allow for that.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be one of my questions, is that if you're booked
Yeah.
so far in advance and something comes through that you can't say no to, like, do you push other people back? Well, that sounds like a better way of doing it. It's just like make sure you
Yeah.
things that happen really quickly.
So
That
working
makes
with C and Izzy, like, I know that if I can't take on a project or if their budget doesn't stretch to working with me, or if we can't make it work timeline wise, they can maybe work with Steve or Izzy. But I know that if they do work with Steve or Izzy, they're going to be in really, really good hands.
yeah,
It's going to be like working with me, but a different person. And, Steve and Izzy's work does sound like their work. It doesn't sound like my work, but I know that both of them are doing really good work because if you search mastering engineer on the internet, there's loads of wild stuff that comes up. And I never want to just like, if someone don't want to work with Steve and Izzy, fine. If they don't want to work, if they want to go somewhere else, that's totally fine. But I feel like at least giving people the option so that they don't have to wait
yeah,
is good. Because I think, yeah, there's a lot of I've mastered releases for artists who've said that this isn't their first time getting this release mastered and that they weren't happy with it the first time, which sucks. But there are people like and AI companies on the internet who are, you know, not great, like maybe kind of not doing as thorough job, maybe not providing all the formats, that kind of stuff that, people need. And yeah, I just want to give people a really safe option.
But I think that goes back to what we were saying before, isn't it? About people viewing mastering as that part of the process, which is just basically facilitating the release, is getting their music ready so that they can put it on platforms. And what you're saying, like, absolutely counteracts that, and it is that kind of human touch and like, you know, those like thoughtful ears that are absolutely making it sound the best that it can possibly sound.
Thoughtful Ears is a great band name, by the way.
Writing that
Anyone
down.
wants that.
But I think that's the key thing, and I think that's what, you know, everybody that I talk to, you know, when you've come up in conversation, it seems to be that's what sets you aside a lot of the time, is that it is such a considered approach, a very personable approach, and it makes utter sense to me that you've got an army of mastering engineers that have all come through with that same thought process and that same consideration, and that, yeah, absolutely, if you're booked up, you've got these other people that you can recommend wholeheartedly that have still got that same level of attention to detail and that same heart and, you know, a, like, really integral approach to putting those finishing touches on somebody's music. So it does absolutely make sense to have more than one of you. But
I mean, the reason why I wanted to work with Stephen is that he, like, I noticed from the first time we ever spoke, is that he has the same ethos of me, in that the band comes first, the music comes first. Like, you know, this is the band or the artist release. That's all that matters, is that, you know, they're happy. And again, he's a really big music fan. And then with Izzy, again, it was a no-brainer. Like, she's been a DJ for years and years.
right.
And, you know, she mastered something, she brought it to a mentoring session, and I was like, shit, this is better than what I could do. You know, on her first go, because she just knows how music should sound. And so I think mastering, like, a lot of it is based on taste. You know, what are your music tastes? And I think the really great mastering engineers just have just excellent taste. Like, you know, going back to Mandy Parnell's discography, like, oh, it's legendary. Like, her taste is impeccable and her work is impeccable. So yeah, that's the goal.
It's incredible. It's incredible to kind of to hear it in, like, the how quickly it all kind of built up after that point. But we've got to bear in mind that you did loads of stuff before this as well, that it hasn't just, it's not like overnight kind of all of a sudden you're a mastering engineer and you're getting booked up months and months in advance. Is that, you know, when you were kind of establishing yourself as a set of hands in the studio as well, like, you know, what were the steps before you broke out on your own to be a freelance mastering engineer?
I don't fully understand the question. I'm so sorry.
Like, what did you, like, if you think about the steps before you went freelance as a mastering engineer, like, where were you working and where were you operating? What was your day to day before you were the kind of your own day to day, if that makes sense?
So I started working a marketing job in 2013, and I think that really kind of helped me, you know, I really understood the importance of having a really clear website. I
Yeah.
paid someone to write a bio for me because I really, like, understood that's a specialist skill. Like, just pay a professional to do it. You know, just kind of making sure that basically that you look as trustworthy as possible.
Mhm.
I hope you are as trustworthy, like, I hope I am. Because, like, yeah, it's, you know, it's scary hiring a stranger on the internet to work on your music, which is your pride and joy. It's your art. That's really scary. And so, yeah, doing a marketing job kind of taught me the importance of all of that. And then I was gonna have a break from mastering, actually, when I went to the British Library. So I love my job there so much. I got to work with one of my amazing friends, Thea, who's just a phenomenal engineer, but an amazing human as well. And, like, getting to, you know, go and work on tape every day and work with my friends, and it was so good. But London's expensive.
Oh my God.
So I really just basically needed more money to pay my rent because,
Yeah.
as you do in London. And I started sharing a studio with a musician who wanted to use a studio kind of 9 to 5 as his like day job. And then I'd go there after work, and so evenings and weekends, and just do mastering. And yeah, just try and like learn. I was basically underground for the entire time because I got the tube to my job, sat in a basement studio all day, then got the underground to my other basement studio, and then got the underground home where it was dark. So, you know, when people that's why it's weird when people are like, "Oh, you're living my dream life." It's like, yeah, but yeah, I did. Do you want to spend like an entire year living in the dark and like not really doing anything outside of work? And then, I moved to Brighton and carried on working on the British Library project, and again loved it. It was amazing, but mastering got more intense, and I kept it up because I kind of, built some momentum and didn't want it to go at that point. But my plan was to go to the British Library and just enjoy being in London,
Yeah.
like enjoy being closer to my friends and getting to
Mhm.
see people and, being sociable and seeing all the culture. And but yeah, it didn't happen. But
There are a lot of basements though.
so yeah, that's how it happened. And then I actually went part-time at my transfer engineer job in January 2020. And so then that gave me like 2 full weekdays to focus on mastering.
Oh, right, okay.
So it kind of like it eased up the workload a little bit.
Yeah.
But then I think there was a point, it might have been May 2020, where it like things just got relentless. I was like, I can't say no to any of this. This is my dream. Like I never thought I'd be able to do mastering as a full-time job. I always thought that, oh, maybe I'll be part-time and maybe I'll just stay part-time forever. Like maybe that's it. That's cool. I never thought that I could do this
Okay.
full-time.
That that's so interesting. That's really interesting that you kind of didn't have it in your mind that this would end up being full time. Is that it sounds like a transitional period in a way, but also sounds like this has taken you by surprise.
Yeah, I think when you're so close to something and you're so busy all the time and you're so in it, you can't really see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
I think that was like what was happening because yeah, I don't know, I couldn't, like I was operating really badly, but basically on a day-to-day basis, and it was sort of, just look at the drawer if I replied to an email.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I wasn't really like doing bookings or anything. I was just replying to the odd person saying, "Yeah, I can master
Yeah.
this,"
And then
and
doing
then
it and then on to the
drowning,
yeah.
doing it, and then going, "Oh, what's next?"
Yeah.
But sort of drowning in emails and so it wasn't until I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's not sunken that I do this full time yet. I don't know.
I think my experience of working in London sounds pretty similar to yours as well. And it is that like, oh, you're living the dream kind of thing as well, is that most of my jobs that I did were in basements. And it
Yeah.
was just like, I'm sat here and like basically sat at a laptop sending data to different people for releases of records and, like basically just backwards and forwards sending different content to different people in a basement, not seeing sun, and then going home.
Then you stand in someone's armpit for an hour on the tube on the way home, and you're like, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I hated commuting when I lived in London. So every time I ever got a different job, I just moved closer to the job. Like I just couldn't do it. It was just like, I don't want this to be. I think that was one of the things that I realized pretty quickly, is that I didn't want long journeys to bookend my day.
Yeah.
That wasn't for me. So I'd always just like move closer to the job, but I'd still be in basements for like, most of my life. But yeah, it was my experience was pretty similar. So the decision to move up to Liverpool, where did that come from? Was that something that was work related, or?
Not really. I wanted to be back in the north to be close to family, so I'm from Manchester, but obviously I like Manchester, like it's familiar, I'm from there, it's cool, but I didn't fancy living there again. I don't know why, it's very grey. It's really, really expensive and everything's really far away.
Yeah.
Whereas, I'd been used to Brighton, like I'd sort of used to small city vibes. Liverpool just sort of felt like, oh, I can walk to a gig if I want.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
that kind of, oh, I can go and walk and meet someone for coffee. Whereas in Manchester, unless you're in the city centre, you can't just go and walk and meet someone for coffee. It's too big.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, it's close enough to go and visit family. But I guess, it's just a lot. Yeah, it's a lot easier to be sociable here, I think.
Yeah,
Which I like.
yeah. Manchester's still got London vibes in the sense that it's very expensive, and so if you're moving up north to to have like a better quality of life and to have some, I want to say disposable income, but I still definitely spend up to my means. But if you want to have more of a life, I guess, that you can afford to live, Manchester still feels like it's not much different as well.
Yeah. Whereas Liverpool feels really green as well, and I like that. Like, I'm about 10 minutes from Sefton Park. I'm right next to Princes Park. Like, it's really leafy, and it kind of feels like I live in the countryside, apart from I don't. I'm just off a main road, and I like that vibe. I like it.
Well, you know what they say about the countryside of the Merseyside.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you is, I guess, putting myself in a situation of maybe like a newer artist or a band that doesn't have representation, that is advocating on behalf of themselves, that is releasing music and is acknowledging, the process that their music goes on before it gets released is important, and still getting to grips with asking for what they want, or even knowing what they want out of it. I'm sure you've worked with a ton of artists in this situation. Is like, how best do they communicate with you about what they want out of their releases? What's useful to you so that you don't have that like forward and backwards, that that you're getting enough information in advance so that you can really kind of dig into the flavor of what they're after, and they get what they want as well.
I think, I think for a new artist, don't communicate how you think that music people should communicate. Communicate how you communicate.
Yes.
And if you describe a sound as like, oh, I want that to sound more green, or I want this to sound like, warmer or whatever, describe it like that. You don't need technical, like just, I'll work around other people's language, because I think an album a day, thereabouts. I work on roughly about 1,000 projects a year. Chances are I've kind of met and worked with people that have communicated in a similar way before and used similar words. But I think it becomes a little bit tricky when people try and use technical language, but don't necessarily have a technical background. I'd much rather someone just talk to me in non-technical language than thinking, oh, mastering's technical, I'll learn the language, and then it's kind of, that's almost harder in a way. So I think I think just communicate how is authentic to you.
Yeah.
And I think as well for a first project, it's really, really important that you go with your gut. Like if you think something isn't right, don't be like, oh yeah, I think it's fine. Just, trust your gut. Like if you think something could be better, then say that. Like no one's going to be offended. Everyone working on your project wants you to be happy with your project and for it to sound the best it can. So yeah, if you're like, oh, this song, it needs something else, just say that. Just yeah, trust your gut. And I think don't listen to people who might try and fob you off. Like, they're like, oh yeah, it'd be fine that though. In the real world, no one will notice, but that doesn't matter because it's your art.
Oh,
And
I'm
you'll
so pleased
notice.
you said that. I'm so pleased that you said it. Like both of those points, I feel like are so important, like hugely. And I think for a lot of people who've been working on their projects just by themselves, which is most like new artists, that they haven't really kind of interacted with a creative that can add something to their music. It's usually just their friends and their family, and we're all surrounded by people who just tell us what we want to hear as well, right? Like it's, when it comes to, well, I guess some people not, but I think it can feel quite intimidating the first time that you let somebody else in, especially if they've mixed it themselves as well. It can feel very, very daunting. And particularly with like, all of the amazing like records that you've worked on, that all of the people that you've interacted with, it kind of puts you in a separate sphere to them as well, like kind of quite naturally, and you get into your head about it. But one of the biggest things I feel is the way that we communicate with each other, and putting on a front, or like pretending that we know more than we do, and that I feel like that can be something that really, really holds us back. So I think hearing from you is just like communicate in the way that you would describe it, in the way that the vocabulary that you would use, I think is just absolutely gorgeous. Like, because that was something that intimidated me, particularly as a non-musician, somebody that hadn't spent very much time in recording studios. The first time I entered into those spaces, I was shitting myself. And the conversations that I was having with people, I just didn't want to look like I'd been found out as somebody that didn't know anything. And then I started hearing the way that people communicated with each other, like trusted people that I really enjoyed the company of, and hearing them describe music in colors and feelings, and no jargon. Like no jargon was just like such an eye opener to me. And I think that's what we really need to get across, is that like, don't use language that you wouldn't normally use. Don't use what you think people want you to hear, because it'll just make people go, what are you going on about? And ultimately you won't get what you want out of it as well. So that's a really, really gorgeous thing to tell people, I think, is just be you. Like, absolutely. And I think that red flag as well of like, if somebody goes, oh, it'll be fine. Like, I think this is how you develop that gut feeling though, isn't it? Is appreciating that you need to be like, it's super, super precious almost, of like things that you're going to put out into the world. And that if somebody says it'll be fine, oh, it'll be all right, don't worry about that. Oh, nobody'll notice. Oh, yeah.
The thing is, like, whatever you put out, people will think it's supposed to be like that, and
Like
that's fine.
Yeah.
But you're the one that's going to notice it every single time you hear your song like played on the radio or something. You're like, oh God, I wish I'd said something about that bit. Say it, like, because I think especially with streaming, like stuff lasts forever on the internet. Like it's always going to be there. And if you go back when you're dead old and you search for your song, you're like, oh fuck. I didn't say anything. Like it's gonna do your head in. But it's all art. Like I think the artist is the only person that should be precious about it. Like everyone else, mix engineers and mastering engineers, and we're just here to kind of facilitate bringing your vision to life.
Yeah.
Really. It's not as well, you know, I don't see it as my place to go, oh yeah, you'll be fine, no one will notice it. Like if something's bothering you, then
I
say
can't think of anything worse than saying that to somebody. It's kind of belittling or even demeaning the whole, like what they've created almost by just going, yeah, we'll just rub a damp cloth over it and it'll all be all right.
yeah. It just, I don't know, like new music is my passion. Like I love discovering new bands, and it really disheartens me, especially in kind of women in music and gender minority circles, to hear, you know, I hear a lot of stories of like, oh, you know, I released a load of music, but then someone said something and I lost all confidence.
Yeah.
It's horrible. I don't like that. So, yeah, I think like trusting your gut is a big part of being able to feel confident in your release when it's out there.
Yeah. Do you think that's part of your responsibility as well, is to kind of like boost people and make people feel confident about what they've created?
I do, but not in a fake way. So,
Hopefully not. Go on.
like, I genuinely love everything that I work on, and if I love people's music, I'll tell them, but I'm not gonna tell them if I don't.
Yeah.
But in order to do this every day, I have to find something that I genuinely love about every single project that I work on. Otherwise, I'm gonna start hating my job, and I don't want to do that. I've worked too hard. But I think, you know, I think one of the things I really enjoy is supporting people and going to see artists when they're, you know, see them live when their release is out in the world and watching them play these songs live. And I hope that gives people confidence. But I think the whole process of mastering and, you know, I think the kind of back and forth and the discussions about, oh, you know, could this sound a bit like warmer or brighter or that kind of stuff. I hope that that gives the artist confidence hearing, you know, they're hearing their music sound different.
Mhm.
And I hope that gives them kind of, you know, excitement and confidence and like, you know, and I hope that when they get their sort of finished masters kind of packaged and all nicely organized and stuff, I hope that they're like really excited to release their music.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's such a sweet sentiment as well. And I think the way that I look at it as well is like being able to put your art out into the world is such a privilege that not everyone gets to do. And I think that sums it up really beautifully, is that you're presenting them that package that allows them to do that. And that is just a huge, huge moment for any artist, like whether they're new or whether they're, you know, just like they've been sat on something for ages and they've been working it, and now you're turning it into something that makes it ready to put out into the world. That's really, really special. Thank you so much, Katie. This has been such a lovely conversation, and I've been looking forward to doing it for ages. I've also not done one of these Q&As for so long, and I was really, really nervous about it as well. So thank you for being absolutely dreamy and making it
Oh,
really.
you're so welcome. Thanks for chatting with me. It's been really fun.
And now that we've done this, and we can use this, we'll have to get you over in real life as well, all the way to Birkenhead from Toxteth. Come on.
I've still never been to Future Yard.
Shut up. We're not having it. But yeah.
You know what? I was actually supposed to go to a gig at Future Yard a little bit ago, and the gig got moved.
Oh, was it the Loose Articles gig?
No, it was Sly and the Family Drone.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, there'll be something coming up that we'll have to get you to, and then
Definitely.
we'll be able to introduce you to some of our artists hopefully as well at some
I
point.
love that.
But thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I hope I get to see you really, really soon. But take care.
Totally.
I'll see
Bye.
you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.